Hi, this is Vladimir Štimac from Anadolu Efes. You're listening Sweet 16, best podcast out there.
The clock strikes midnight for Maccabi as their season comes to a crashing end. Luka Doncic steps up, steps back, and makes it big. And we look ahead to the final round of regular season action. It's all ahead on Sweet 16. Tune in.
Hello and welcome to Sweet 16, an open look on EuroLeague basketball. As always, I'm Moshe from Team Scout, the man with the plan. And with me, as always, my great friends and co-hosts, both Emmett Ryan and Aris Barkas from Eurohoops. Guys, I know it ain't no April Fool's Day, but we had one hell of a week.
We really do, Moshe. Even with the 8 playoff teams being known, there's a lot to discuss today. Obviously, we'll get into that in a second. In Dublin, it's all going good here. Crazy schedule at my day job, I think, as anyone who's been following me on the internet will know the last couple of weeks. And the road to the playoffs. Well, even though it's, we know who the 8 teams are, it starts here.
And hello from Athens. Here is the Easter week, the week leading to Easter, and that's pretty much not exactly a national holiday, but schools are out, so everyone is at this point just getting a preview of the summer vacations, and some of them are making plans for vacations on Belgrade.
We begin, as always, with the most inaccurately named segment in all of sports and entertainment today. We'll be discussing how Maccabi joined a club nobody wants to be part of. We'll look at sort of the how far Zalgiris can go scenario with the Final Four. And after that, we're going to be looking at, the potential scenarios, obviously, because there's still a bit of a shaking and a bacon to go between positions 3 and 8 in terms of the playoffs to see who's going to play who. And then, we're going to move on, as always, to what we've learned and what we've not learned for the second year in a row at Sweet 16. And one thing we've learned is Luka Doncic is really good. We'll be talking about his comeback big time. Bit of Kevin Pangos and a bit of Alan Omich as well. And then for the 30th and final time in the regular season, we will be giving our bad choices, also known as our Game of the Weeks and Games of the Week even, and predictions. It's all ahead of us here, but first we begin, as ever, with the wonderfully, accurately, perfectly titled 4-Minute Warning.
And I second that motion.
4 minutes to get through all the action that just happened in EuroLeague. It's the 4-minute warning.
And well, I'll be starting off with you on this one, Moshe, because you're the dude who coined this club, the 04 club, where it's like dropped 4 games in a row. And Maccabi took a while to hit it. Took a long time to hit it, in fact, this season. But they joined it in style, I think it's fair to say, well, as far as style goes, for that particular, collaboration, that club, where Baskonia it was sort of a win or die game for Maccabi, and Maccabi chose death. Fourth quarter, they just, got beaten up in that final 10 minutes to save their season. Did not work out, I think it's safe to say. A pretty clear result in the end. We're not going to go wrong for Maccabi this season, Moshe, because there's an awful lot to get through there. What went wrong for them last Thursday night?
Well, it depends how you look at it. I mean, we can analyze it from, 2 weeks ago, 4 months ago till now. But bottom line is they talked about a process from the beginning of the season. Now, when you think about it, even when Zoc signed with Fener, they didn't really make it in the first year, if you remember. It took them some time until that project was successful. The question is... The biggest question is patience. Will they have it? What players will they be able to keep? Which ones do they actually want to keep? Are there any other changes that they're going to make in the future? A lot of things that that still have a big question mark about it. I think that they had a chance to bring perhaps some sort of a reinforcement. And after that, it didn't happen. Obviously, I'm talking about Kuzminskas. When that deal didn't materialize, then it looked like they still perhaps needed another one, or at least try to make another one, but they couldn't find the specific guy that they wanted, or at least that's how it looked like. So bottom line, that's about them. Now, full disclosure here. While recording one of the episodes of the second season of Sweet 16, we discovered the following. Yes, Zvezda didn't make it to the playoffs last year, but they were not members of that club, though Dachka were. They did join the 04 club and made it. There was only one team to actually induct themselves into that notorious club. Having said that, though, it goes without saying, you know, with the form that Maccabi were playing in the second round, perhaps the easygoing schedule they had in the first round, we do have to somehow to acknowledge the fact that in the first round, for most of their games, there were a lot of players that didn't come to play against them. For example, Madrid were without Yui, and you know, not just him. A lot of players were missing from Madrid, though it was a good win. Still, Madrid should have had they have depth pretty much, but it wasn't just them. We saw a lot of teams arriving to the arena, not being at their fullest strength. I think with all things considered, Maccabi pretty much they are seated where they should have been in a way, if you know what I'm saying. Aris, what do you think about Maccabi? And obviously, Emmett, yourself as well.
You know what? I'm kind of disappointed. First of all, I believe that Maccabi in the most crucial part of the year, they will get the needed wins in order to defend the advantage that they had against Baskonia. Of course, Baskonia never lost in the last stretch of the season in order to seal their place in the playoffs. So we have also to acknowledge that Baskonia was simply a great opponent, and that was evident in the game against Maccabi. However, Maccabi really lost all chances to advance in the home game against Panathinaikos. That was their real last chance in order to be in a position to really get into the playoffs. First of all, I think that the worst thing that could happen now to Maccabi will be a rebuilding. They need to keep Coach Pachia, and that means also, because I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that Coach Pachia has a contract for next season, right?
Yes, he signed a long-term deal.
Yes, I think that first of all, what they should do at this point is build around this season. They will probably even have to convince Coach Pachia to stay, because Coach Pachia in the past never tried to hide. He never tried to hide behind a contract if something that was not according to his likings happened in the club, and then Coach Pachia should evaluate what went wrong. I think that in theory Maccabi has everything. What during the season was evident was that in crunch times the team in general, not just some players, made bad decisions. They rushed, they made turnovers, they didn't have the mental focus or the mental toughness to get over adversity. I don't see that you have to blame someone. The easy thing to say is that Maccabi doesn't have a real floor general. Well, the last time that Maccabi won the EuroLeague, they really didn't have a pass-first point guard that was working for the rest of the team. I think that this whole thing is just a part of a process. They have everything. They have to make minor tweaks. Spachia should decide if someone should go and if someone should be replaced. And I think that you build character. You can't buy it or win it over time. If Mike James had lost one shot and Maccabi had beaten Panathinaikos, maybe the whole conversation at this point would have been different. So sometimes it's really about the details. And the problem for Maccabi, the main problem for Maccabi is that we have to compare Maccabi with Baskonia, and this comparison is not flattering, to say the least, about Maccabi. That's the real issue now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what ours is getting to there as well is that what Maccabi need are pieces, not another rebuild explosion. Like we've seen that when Maccabi have to blow it all up and try and do it that way, it doesn't work. And like there's a reason for that, and we've seen with other teams as well that an explosion and hope for the best with the rebuild immediately doesn't work. If you're going to do it, it takes time, it takes seasons. And to get there, like when you even think about it, like, Maccabi have to look at what worked this year should be their first thing they're asking themselves in the offseason. Not what didn't work, what worked this year. And you start from there. And then you build on from there and you go, okay, well, this, and this work. Because an awful lot of things did work in terms of, at some level, not obviously not enough to get them to the playoffs, but still to be a much more competent basketball team than the one we'd seen the previous season. So you go from there, and the one before that at that. So you go from there, you're kind of going, okay, what do we need to make this go from working to being more likely to actually, not have the slide we had or be in a position where we need to survive a slide like that next season? Because Baskonia went off on a crazy run. Their last 6 wins, like 6 games in a row, 6 wins, only one of them wasn't by double digits. Like they were in crunch time and just beat teams. Like they just flat out went out there and beat them. And one of the ways you do that isn't down to getting hot in a hurry. A lot of that comes down to having guys who are used to like being out there, playing under certain systems and playing sort of together. And while Baskonia have always had to get by with losing players who were seen as key guys year in, year out because of the financial reality, enough of the core stays there year in, year out, or at least from the preceding year, to keep them in that position mentally. Like, because obviously their start to the season was horrendous. Like, we've documented this over the last few months. How they've bounced back comes down to their experience of working together, of knowing what they can do as a unit. And that's essentially where Maccabi needs to go with this unit going forward. It needs to look at, right, a lot of things did go right this year because they did. Like some of their W's were quite impressive. They dropped games which, frankly, they shouldn't have, or at least should have been more competitive in. And that's where they go, right, well, what was it about the way we played that caused us to drop it, rather than what's the superstar we need? Because it's not about one player, it's not about one roster, it's about building on what you've got with this team. It really does come down to that level of simplicity for Maccabi, and that's, I think, one of the things that's being lost on a few teams in the sort of this this newer era of EuroLeague. And I even go back to sort of when we went to the expanded top 16 format, never mind the current 16 team single season format, where the urge to explode is a little too quick. It really is, when things don't quite go right. And sometimes you got to accept that it's going to be a season or two's work to get back to where you need to be. And I think Maccabi, after their title win back in Milan, never really accepted that. And like Barca, for the same matter, like after their Spanish title win at the end of that season, never really accepted that. And that's where Maccabi are now. Then you look at other teams who have been gradual, which is moving us on to our next topic, and Zalgiris. Zalgiris are very much like the even poorer version of Baskonia in that if somebody's good, keeping hold of them is a nightmare because Zalgiris can't compete financially. What Zalgiris have, though, is keeping enough bodies. And they're in a situation now where we know they're in the playoffs. We know they're, more than likely sixth seed in the playoffs. Someone can correct me on if there's tiebreakers that would allow Baskonia or Kimki to jump them, but I believe at the moment it's unlikely for Zalgiris to get jumped, particularly when you're looking into the final week where both them and Oli are playing, and obviously that has impact on the playoff series to come. And you go, well, what's gone right with Zalgiris? Well, for starters, they've trusted their coach. Like when they brought in Saris, it was a mid-season hire, and it's kind of going, well, right, we'll trust you to get to the end of this, do the business at the LKL, and we'll see how Europe goes. They had a good season last year, but it was obvious early enough on that they weren't going to, well, mid-season, they were going to finish in a good position, but not in the playoffs. And they're two very different things. But they figured the progress we've made here, this is the guy to stick with, as well as obviously Saras being the hottest coach in Europe, which can't be ignored. But it was a thinking around it as kind of, well, what are the pieces we still have? When like they brought in new guys, they were building around the pieces they had. Even if these guys were going to be more important, they were thinking about how they functioned in there. So going to you, Aris, first on this topic about Zalgiris, because we're looking at them facing either Oli or Venner or Sheska realistically in the playoffs. The likely pairing is Oli. We'll be getting to the pairings in a while. How far can they go? Like, is a Final Four realistic, or could we even see them at least taking a win in a series, like taking a single game?
First of all, I have to agree with you at one point because of the word you used. You said that Saras is the hottest coaching name in Europe at this point. Yes, Saras is the coach that is taking a lot of credit for what is going on in Kaunas, and rightfully so. But I think that at this point, in my opinion at least, if we had an award for Coach of the Year before the Final Four, because at this point the Coach of the Year is the coach who wins the EuroLeague. But if we had an award right now, my pick will be, without much thinking, Pedro Martinez.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Saras is not going to be a great coach, but I think that the coach that really stole the show this season is Pedro Martinez. He started the season unemployed after winning the Liga Endesa, which is kind of unheard of. He came to Baskonia when the team seemed to be in ruins, and now if we watch closely how the teams performed during the last stretch of the season, you might argue that Baskonia might be the strongest opponent from the bottom four of the playoffs. But let's get back to Zalgiris. Zalgiris overachieved without any question, and I think that the play of Pangos, Misic and White is greatly underestimated at this point, and I'm not speaking about them having just a good night. I'm speaking about their consistency throughout the season. So they will be a force, and their main weapon will be that they will not have any pressure of any kind, and 15,000 fans, crazy Lithuanian fans behind them. Having said that, I really don't see Zalgiris being capable at this point of the season creating an upset like they did, let's say, against Fenerbahce in the early stages of the season. I think that against CSKA Moscow, Olympiacos and Fenerbahce, they have a fighting chance, but this is pretty much it. You have seen the game of the last game of CSKA against Zalgiris, and CSKA clearly wasn't motivated, as Coach Itoudis admitted, and they also tried to give minutes, let's say, to Rad in an effort to make him part of the team. They were clearly not the CSKA that we are used to see. I don't see them pulling off an upset. I think that, to be frank, I don't see an upset happening except in the very possible couple between Real Madrid and Panathinaikos. Khimki, which still has injury issues and has achieved for the first time the status of playing in the playoffs. Zalgiris, that has the second smaller budget in the league, only Tsverna Zvezda has costed less, has overachieved, and also Baskonia has saved their season after being a train wreck in the first few weeks. So those teams are also already content with what they have achieved. and I really don't see them really threatening Olympiacos, CSKA Moscow and Fenerbahce. It will be very interesting to see how those playoffs couple will come out in the end, but at this point it's not like, let's say, a team with full roster that had some bad luck and is ready to bounce back and has the pedigree to win it all, like, let's say, Barcelona. If Barcelona was on the spot of Baskonia, then yes, I will say that Barcelona will have a chance simply because of their personnel. Now, the only couple that I believe can create some kind of upset is the very possible couple between Panathinaikos and Real Madrid.
Moshe, just jumping over to you on all of this.
You do realize that one win, just one win, that's what separates Zalgiris from the 8th and the 5th position.
Yeah, it's like we're obviously going to go into a breakdown of how we're seeing the seedings playing out at the moment in a moment. But like you just described the situation perfectly. Zalgiris right now are 6th, and we're all guessing they finished 6th largely. But we really do mean guessing. Like, you're not even educated at this one because, like, they're one loss from 8th and they're one win from 5th, depending on one of the results. And that's kind of like, a lot of flux considering we're talking about matchups in the postseason. It's like we're only have one game to go. That's an awful lot of flux for one game. So yeah, that's kind of crazy. But Moshe, before we get on to the matchups, your own thoughts on what Zalgiris have done this season?
I would say that yes, I'm agreeing with the fact that they've perhaps overachieved, but we can only say that for so long or for so many times because you look at the way that they've played and you're seeing an impressive team. And they are a team first and foremost, and I think that that's something that helped them in the most amazing of ways. But here's the thing, they've always were considered as underdogs most of the games that they've played. So obviously at some point we've stopped being surprised by them actually getting the win against teams that on paper were much better. But that's what makes it so special because true, nobody gives them a chance at the playoffs, no matter who are they going to play. But for the sake of the argument, just for the funs of it, should Zalgiris actually make it to the Final Four? In this format, we just mentioned right at the beginning of this segment that Charis is most definitely the hottest name in the market. And even though that Coach Martinez is bound to get, or at least was bound to get some sort of an award, and funnily enough, we can say that he might actually finish as a EuroLeague champ because Baskonia are in great form. But getting back to Zalgiris, it's if they were actually to make it to the Final Four, I could not rule them out simply for what they've achieved so far, even though it can be considered as overachieving.
Yeah, I'd be with you on that, because it's been a while since we've been a Final Four where I said anyone was kind of going writing them off even though we had favorites and all that, and that's who we thought was going to win. But moving on to the possible matchups now, if the playoff seedings are identical after this round as they are going into it, the seedings we're looking at are CSKA versus Khimki, Fener versus Baskonia, Olympiacos versus Zalgiris, and that Real Panathinaikos, which at the moment is basically going to come down to who gets home court advantage, depending on a tiebreak. And now, if you're Fenerbahce, you kind of feel you've been given a raw deal because you got Baskonia, the hottest team in terms of runs right now in EuroLeague, on 6 in a row. Probably, I think it's safe to say, going to finish with a 7-game winning stretch unless FS actually care. They're going to get them. It's hard to see Khimki not finishing 8th purely because I think either Zalgiris or Barcelona wins. Either Zalgiris gets the upset over an Oli side that takes it easy, or Barcelona decides, sure, screw it, we'll win the last game of the season. So that's obviously getting to our picks later, but like you're looking at those and it's kind of going, right, that's Baskonia and Fener as the one where it's a little nasty for all the work you've done in a season to get to a situation where you're going to have single digit losses and your reward is a team on a 7 game winning streak. I know, Aris, you were saying that you don't think Baskonia could do Fener, but at the same time, it's kind of not the ideal situation for them. I'm sure they much rather would get Zalgiris if they had the choice of who to face.
You know, that's a catch-22. I think that, frankly, the team that nobody wants to play from the top four is either Real Madrid or Panathinaikos, depending on the final standings. Okay, those are the playoffs. Who do you expect to play against? You know, and I think that despite the fact that the wins are kind of similar in numbers from the third position to the eighth, there is a qualitative difference between the records. For example, Zalgiris got to this record by defending its home court and winning on the road against all the teams that were ranked behind them. The only, and correct me if I'm wrong, the only big road win that I remember is the win against Fenerbahce, right?
Yeah, of the teams above them, that's the only big one, yeah.
So the fact that you are taking care of the games that you should take care and you ramp up numbers, it's admirable because it demonstrates your consistency, but doesn't really make you a next level team. On the contrary, you see Olympiacos winning on the road against Real Madrid and against Fenerbahce, and then losing, for example, by Valencia when everything was decided. So I think that if we have healthy teams, and that's the number one thing in the playoffs, if the teams are healthy, then I really don't see how Khimki, Baskonia and Zalgiris can really create upsets. Maybe Baskonia, maybe if they were paired up with a Spanish team, let's say with Real Madrid, because of the intricacies that there exist in matchups between teams from the same country, maybe they will have more than a fighting chance. At this point, I don't think that there's much to say, except of course for the very possible couple between Panathinaikos and Real Madrid. And speaking about health, it's obvious at this point that Khimki can't expect to have a full front line in the playoffs, and that's a huge hit. We have Thomas Robinson, who hasn't really found himself after his injury. We have Honeycutt, who is still missing. We have a ton of small injuries around the front line. So I will cut some slack for Khimki because they are not ready at this point to fight for the playoffs. Baskonia is the exact opposite. But if they play against Fenerbahce, I don't see Fenerbahce losing.
And Moshe, because I think we're all largely in agreement that is the one we'd be looking at as, the likely competitive series, Real and Panathinaikos. Because I'm with Aris. I don't see Fenerbahce losing a series. I could well see Baskonia making it a 4-gamer, but I'd be with him even on that. That maybe not enough. If you're Real and Pau, you're looking at those situations. Is home court as important to Real as it is to Panathinaikos right now? Because we all know it's vital to Panathinaikos, but is it something that Real have really got to think about hard?
Last year proved us that you can be the best home team in the competition and it still wouldn't worth a damn thing. Because Panathinaikos were 14-1 and they still end up giving 2 home games to who end up EuroLeague champs, Fener. But obviously, I think Madrid, especially since they got Doncic back and big time, I think that perhaps even Panathinaikos should be a bit worried, let's say, about facing them in a best-of-5 series, not even having the home court advantage. Now, I know that some of Panathinaikos players, they said after the win in Tel Aviv that, or at least agreed that maybe it's for the better. They're not going to play with the home court advantage because, maybe it's going to play for their advantage, as perhaps the level of pressure would be significantly lower. Whenever there's no pressure, you sometimes play much more loosely, with much more confidence. Maybe it's going to help them. But it's like, Ari said that with Baskonia, that for them to match up with a Spanish team would be the best thing possible. Now, the only Spanish team they can face is Madrid, and Madrid does not have the advantage over Olympiacos. If I'm not mistaken, the only way for them to finish as the number 3rd seed is only by, actually I don't think they have a shot.
The only team, Moshe, the only team that has a shot to the 3rd place, not named Olympiacos, is Panathinaikos.
Yes, exactly. And that's because the Oli's win against Panathinaikos doesn't really count in a three-way.
In a three-way tie, the problem for Real Madrid is that they have lost twice to Olympiacos.
Exactly.
Also, yes.
And also, only in a two-way tie, if Real Madrid also loses, then Panathinaikos in a two-way tie with Olympiacos gets the 3rd spot.
Indeed they are. So you see, it's all covered.
Yes, and it's only Panathinaikos has a chance to climb to the 3rd spot, but it's really a long shot. Real Madrid has to lose.
So the point being is that we're not going to see a matchup between Madrid and Baskonia, sadly. But, and there is a big thing I'm about to say. If I'm not mistaken, Fener did not lose this year to Baskonia, and we cannot say that Baskonia are not a solid team, for the very least. So if we cannot say that for the very least they are a solid team, actually they are more than a solid team. So my point is, I don't know how good it would be to Fener to actually face them. I don't think it will be a sweep. But at the same time, I think that the only team that has a lot to lose is actually Zalgiris, because they don't have any sort of advantage. They lost their double, both games to both Khimki and to also Baskonia. So that's why their game could be a do or die, because a loss and they are going to face Fener. And of course, that's if Khimki manages to lose a game also. So basically, if they lose, they are somewhere between 7th and 8th, and that cannot be good for them. Sorry for perhaps messing things up for you, but the situation as is very complicated, but it's fun to say the least. That's how I'm seeing it. I'm just saying bring on the playoffs, because that's the only thing left to say.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to finish off on before we move on to the next segment, because with one game to go, even we're getting confused at what can possibly happen, and we do pay attention, so that is an awful lot, So this brings us on nicely to the Scouts Notebook, where, we all focused on one shot, I think, with good cause last week regarding one young man, because it was pretty badass, Luka Doncic, with that lovely little step back 3 for the W, but he also, throughout the game, it wasn't a case of came in good for the big shot at the end. Looked like he was back, I think it's fair to say. Obviously, Moshe, the Doncic focus is only going to intensify as we lean in towards the playoffs and the Final Four, as his time in Europe is coming to an end. I'm very much in the camp of Nick Kalatis is the MVP, even if Luka Doncic wins it, because, public votes and all that. But, what do you reckon of the way the kid's come back now, the performance he had there last week in Belgrade?
First, that's great news for Coach Lasso. That's number one. Number two, I would like to take you back a few good weeks ago. I don't know if Aris remembered the exact episode that we discussed it, but he said a very smart thing, as always. Aris always says great things, but this time it was a bit different. It was much more than the usual. Ari's buddy, do you remember when you said that perhaps the biggest loss of, for the entire continent, even not just for Madrid or for Doncic, is that we never really got to see him playing alongside a full capacity, healthy, and murderous Sergio Llull?
Yes, I do remember it, and I'm afraid that I was a doom prophet. I really don't see Sergio Llull being fit to play meaningful minutes in the Final Four unless something drastic happens. If he doesn't return by the playoffs in order to get some rhythm back, I don't see him being a factor in the Final Four. I may be totally wrong, but this is what my gut is saying me. He's out for 7 months, and he's a player that needs to practice and needs to feel the games in order to get into full rhythm, in a way like Spanoulis needs some time after injuries in order to get his real self back.
So basically, but still, you were right, and that's what I'm trying to say. I'm agreeing with you throughout the way, and the point being is that we are seeing how amazing Doncic is, but from what I know from teams that I've talked to for the past few weeks, everyone wonders the same thing. Like, not even wonders, they agree that Real Madrid with Llull and Real Madrid without Sergio Llull, two different things. There's this vibe / feelings / call it whatever you would like to call it, but it feels like the teams believe more in their chances of taking Madrid in a best-of-5 series, a Llull-less Madrid, of course. So it's very interesting to see the mental effects that a single player that has yet to play the entire season because of an injury, perhaps just seeing him dressing up, maybe, attending the warm-up, that for itself could have an implication. But, back to your question, Luka is amazing, but do we really think that Madrid would have a sincere shot at a title without, not even a full healthy Llull, for even a Llull that can give you 5, 6, 10 minutes?
Honestly, I think they still have a serious chance at winning it all. I think if they get to Belgrade, it'll actually be very hard for me to pick against them, mostly because the matchup side of things. But it's still a long way to go in that respect. But one of the other players I want to look at this week, obviously, is Kevin Pangos, who, I think it's fair to say the lad did all right last week. A highly efficient game, despite a few turnovers, to really get the job done. And I'm going to turn this one over to Aris, because Pangos is one of those guys where everybody knows he's having a good season, but Aris, what was it about a performance like this that makes you go, this is why he's going to be a very in-demand guy no matter what happens to finish off Zalgiris' year?
Well, I don't really want to sound, biased for Gonzaga, but they really know how to produce top-level point guards. And you see there is also Ghosh in Partizan, who was a star in last year's NCAA Final Four, and now you see Pangos flourishing. It's amazing, and now it's old news, but Pangos was offered to Panathinaikos at one point, and I really can't remember, but I think that Panathinaikos preferred Lekavicius. Not that Lekavicius is a bad player, and I'm not really sure if Pangos came to Panathinaikos if he would have the chance to do the things that he does in Zalgiris. But the guy is ready, and with everyone having an eye on the other side of the Atlantic, and many free agents thinking about moving to the NBA for obvious financial reasons, considering, of course, the level of play and everything else, I think that Pangos is destined next season to be part of a top EuroLeague team. We are all talking about the future of Sarunas Jasikevičius, but we should also think about the future of Pangos, and that says everything for me.
And I wouldn't be surprised as well if the two of them end up in the same place, given how impressed Saras has been with Pangos this year. Lastly, Moshe, we're going to move on to Alan Omic, the oldest looking 25-year-old going, I think it's fair to say, with his rugged features and the wrinkles and all on the face. Despite looking old in the face, he played like the young man he actually is for Zvezda in that defeat against Madrid. What did you like about him?
Well, I have some sort of a question for you guys. I don't even want to say a question, it's more of a riddle.
Okay.
So what does Alan Omic, Matt Jennings, and of course Roger Mason Jr. all have in common?
They all have Slovenian passports, I'm guessing.
Okay, honestly, I didn't think in that direction. Maybe they know also how to milk cows, since in Slovenia they are still not milking them.
Just to be clear, I have no idea if any of the guys other than Omic.
This is racist. I have been to Slovenia, and I must say that they really don't have anything to do with cows at this point, believe me.
Hey, look, it's not me. It's Emmett saying that right after the Eurobasket ended about them not having to milk cows for the next 6 months or so.
That's an Irish thing where if a team wins a big title in Ireland, we always say there won't be a cow milked in wherever they're from for a month. So that's what that references. But no, I have no idea, by the way, if anyone in that trio you named has a Slovenian passport apart from Alan Omic. It's the only thing I could think of that might jump out. So do tell us what they have in common.
The answer is all three of them played for Apollo Jerusalem just before they had their, let's say, big jump or return to the biggest stage that they've played in.
If I remember correctly, Omic didn't last for long in Hapoel, right?
Yes, but so did Matt Jennings. He also went before the season ended.
Yes, but Matt is a great guy, and he's also used to be traveling all around Europe due to his amazing shot. Finally, he got appreciated at Masconia in big ways.
And I suppose looking at Alan's performance though in that game, Moshe, what did you like about it?
He dominated, simple as. And I think that what was so beautiful about it was there was a lot of history in that game. Because Omic, he was facing a team that had one Eddie Tavares. So if you remember, Omic replaced Tavares in Gran Canaria. Yeah, you know, it's kind of a cool thing to actually spot. But I'm just saying, all in all, I think that everyone, and I do mean everyone, they waited. They so much, you know, they were so eager to get at least one great performance from Alan, to see him dominating the way he did. I'm not saying that he's not good. I'm not saying that he's amazing. I'm just saying that for the first time, he put on a monster display in the EuroLeague. We knew he can definitely do it in the Eurocup because he did. He won the Eurocup last year. But I'm saying that to have such an amazing performance in the EuroLeague, that's a first. So Alan, thumbs up. Hope to see you do that again.
And so getting to our games, we've got a 5-3 split here. On Thursday, it's Ceska plays Zvezda, Fenerbahce play Unicaja, Milano play Panathinaikos, Baskonia play Efes, and Barcelona play Khimki. And our three Friday games are Olympiacos Zalgiris, Valencia Maccabi, and Real Madrid versus Broza Bamberg. I'm going to go with my two games to watch and my picks first. I'm going to go with that Barcelona Khimki game because it is going to have that knock-on effect on the other positions in terms of sort of where teams finish in the end. And like I said, I have that sneaky suspicion about Barcelona coming up good for one game at the end of the season. On Friday, simple call really, Olympiacos against Zalgiris. It's likely to have, well, irrespective of anything else, it has to have impact on the rest of the table, considering the Real Bamberg game doesn't start until for 3 hours after the Oli Zalgiris game, so there's a natural impact on final positions no matter what happens in that game. And for my picks, I'm going heavy home, but not wholly home. I'm going to go up Panathinaikos to get a road win in Milano, and I'm going to go with that's it, one road win of the lot. And so, Moshe, over to you for your two games to watch and your winners of the week.
I would like to watch actually Fener versus Unicaja because I know for a fact that there will be a fight over there. This will not be, or at least it's supposed to be. It may end up as a blowout, but we know that at least from Unicaja Malaga, their DNA is to fight and fight and fight and fight, no matter what. So that's my game that I would like to watch on Thursday. I could have easily picked also, maybe Panathinaikos, Milan, or something a bit different, but no, that's the game that I would really like to watch on Friday. The easiest pick as well, obviously, Olympiacos versus Zalgiris. Now, as for my picks themselves, so here we go. I'm taking Ceska, I'm taking Fener, I'm taking Milan? Nah, I'm going with Panathinaikos, Baskonia, Khimki, Oli, and you know what? Maccabi and Madrid.
And Aris, to finish us off, your 2 games to watch and your winners of the week.
Well, we have a slight disagreement on Thursday. I will probably watch Milan against Panathinaikos. I think that Milan will not go out without a fight, but of course I am picking Panathinaikos for the win. And I think that probably this is going to be the only road win of the week. I agree with you, Emmet. I believe that Khimki at this point may just be too content with themselves, and Barcelona will have a motive after losing the game against Estudiantes in the Spanish Liga Endesa and letting Sylvain Landesberg score 48 points. They will have a motive to get the win. And of course on Friday, the game that will probably decide the couplings is the showdown between Olympiacos and Zalgiris. It will be also a very interesting game to watch, and mind you that there is a really good chance for Olympiacos to miss both Papanikolaou and Printezis for this game. To be exact, Printezis has a good chance to play. Papanikolaou maybe will be absent again. So this also creates very interesting implications on this particular game.
And that, for the final time in the regular season, brings us to the end of Sweet 16. Obviously, we'll be going full court press through the playoffs and our postseason roundup. A bit of a surprise for the postseason roundup, because, as some of you who've been following me on the web know, I'm off to WrestleMania for the weekend. I won't be around to record our wrap-up of the regular season show. I will be back for our playoff preview, don't worry. So we will have a special guest coming along who we'll let you all know about ahead of time to fill in for me. I won't be leaving the 2 boys hanging. So for the final time in the regular season, thank you all for listening. I will be back very soon, don't worry. As ever, you can find me at BIE_basketball on Twitter and on Facebook and YouTube /Ball in Europe. And of course, ballineurope.com. And Aris, where can everybody find you?
You can find me as always at Eurohoops.net, at my personal social media on Twitter and on Facebook, and also you can see me and hear me at Cosmote TV.
And as always, you can find me at I am Team Scout and at MosesB1 on Twitter, the Facebook page, Team Scout, and the website itself, teamscout.net. Now, if you haven't subscribed till now, make sure you do. And spread the love as always. So from our headquarters in Tel Aviv, Athens, and in Dublin, till next time.